Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this. You are all members of the Realm Writers Group this year. So why don't we start by having everyone go around and introduce themselves and maybe say whether this is your first year in the Realm Writers Group or if you've been a part of it before.
I'm unmuted, so I guess I'll jump in. Daria Miyeko Marinelli, they, she, and this is my second year. Alyssa, I'll toss it to you.
Thank you for the toss. Alyssa Haddad-Chin, she, her pronouns. This is my first year.
Hi, I'm Anamaria, she, they pronouns, and this is my first year in the Realm Writers Group.
Wonderful. So just talking about the big picture, what do you get from a group like this, and what advice would you offer to others joining a writers group about how to make the most out of the experience? Alyssa, why don't we start with you, if you don't mind?
Sure. I think for me, the opportunity to have a set time each month to not only present work, really whatever I'm working on or thinking about, but hear from other folks and just feed off of creativity is just so beneficial. Especially after going through like the writing fellow process, just having that continue on, I have found has been great. It has greatly impacted not only my work, but just the excitement that I feel to like be in a room with these great folks.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that having a set time where we talk about these things, where we are able to kind of fill each other's creative cups, provides a kind of scaffolding, especially in something that's so rooted in like self-discipline and making yourself right. Like having these kind of structure and deadline is really helpful to me. For me as well, because I'm located in Seattle and not New York, like quite a few of the other playwrights. It's been really helpful just to get to know people and to get to know other playwrights, especially. There's talk about, what's going on in the playwriting scene at the moment, and just being able to build relationships and see what the some of the most exciting work coming out of playwrights today is. Like, I feel so privileged to be able to read the work that you all produce and see it in every form in the process. I think that's inspiring to me as an early career playwright, and really helpful as I go about how to create my own creative process and what that looks like.
Yeah, Anamaria, I'm also in LA, so sort of having a steady drumbeat of a communal place is really great. And I don't know about you guys, but also just having the brutal deadline of like, I am now sharing this month. I have to get my shit in order. Can we swear? I have to get my stuff in order. Is really helpful for me as a writer. I think Katherine was also asking, like, what do we think? Like, there's a second part to that question. Like,
The
what
second
advice?
part was about like what advice you would offer to someone joining a group.
I'd say I've been thinking a lot in my community about gives and gets, where we talk about like what is something we're hungry to maybe receive, and then what is something that we can offer. And so whenever the email comes around of like, do you want to join? I do try to check in with myself of like, given that it is a time commitment and like a heart commitment, what is the thing that I'd love to accomplish at the end? And then also what kind of dramaturg and how can I be of service to you guys in group? So that's mine.
Great. Does anyone else want to offer up any advice?
I just think that's such a great way of looking at it, because we're all, juggling multiple things and multiple projects, and like to get the opportunity to be in a writer's group I always want to say immediately yes, because sometimes it's hard to know if it's going to come back again. So you're just like, yes, I want to say yes to this immediately. But capacity might not always be, it just might not be ready for you. And so I would just say, like, my advice would be like, really sit down and think, like, do you have the time to give yourself, not only give yourself the space to work on something and bring in work, but to be of service to like the playwrights around you. And that's something I'm always striving to like be better at myself.
Right. So being part of a writers group doesn't just mean you have a place to share work. It also means being part of a community. So I'm wondering what you think are the specific benefits of that, and are those benefits different depending on your career stage or experience level?
To me, part of the benefit is not to be grandiose, but like the community we're making is part of the fresh voice of like the American theater, right? So like to me, getting to see what other playwrights are doing and scheming on and making plays and building on the page, it's inspiring. It's really cool. It's fun to remember that there's 1,000 different ways to make a play, and we get to be in space with sort of 7 of those. In terms of benefit across career stage, I'm like, part of me's like, I'm only at the stage I'm in, and I've been in the group for sort of 2 consecutive years, so the data sample is small. But what I'd say has been really rewarding is to remember that like at whatever stage I'm in or we're in, there's always a struggle, or there's always like something to kind of be wrangled with, and then to sort of at the end, sometimes we'll sort of talk about maybe something we're wondering about or something that's top of mind. And it's fun to kind of listen across the range of experiences and career stages, and just sometimes offer advice, sometimes learn, sometimes listen. So I think that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I would definitely say that there's so many benefits of being part of this little community here. I will say one specific example I can give is I actually shared in the last month where we did our little round table circle thing. And I was asking some advice about feeling like you're in a sophomore slump, because I think something that people forget about playwriting is there's so many structures and inner workings going on around you. There's the relationship with your agents, deadlines, submissions, commissions, like there's relationships with all the external that impacts the way you're forming your work as well. So I would say being able to just genuinely ask advice, whether it's related to your piece or related to your career, is really helpful and really valuable, especially coming from people who have been there themselves. Like I said, I was saying, echoing some of my own fears that I just didn't know what to do next, or if it would measure up to the last thing I did. And pretty much everyone responded because they recognized that fear and they had felt it themselves. One of our group members, Sarah, actually said, like, I don't know if that ever really goes away, but you just carry on to the next thing. And that was very comforting to hear. I think there's a huge emotional, psychological benefit from being in a room full of creatives, living this creative lifestyle, and just being able to have people recognize that life in you as well, and being able to comfort, echo back, and give advice on career stages has been very helpful and kind of unexpected. I didn't realize that was going to be part of the benefit of joining, but it has been a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I had anticipated that it would be something that I should like maybe come in and expect, or like even needed. And now I know, just speaking for myself, like hearing Anamaria talk about that in our last meeting was like so helpful to me as someone who's like navigating certain similar things. But also I'm sharing next month, and I already know for a fact I'm going to come in and I will be getting my first production, and I'm going to be like, tell me everything you all know about being produced, because I don't know this uncharted waters. And like, what an amazing resource to have all these wonderful artists who have varying levels of experience be able to like share wisdom on that. For me too, like I'm based in New York. I'm very lucky to have a wide range of folks that like a lot of playwright friends that I know, but these are people that I would never get to cross paths with often because we're all in various other places nationally. And so it means a lot to me to get to be a part of a group of people from all over.
Yeah, I think for me as a facilitator of the group, like the camaraderie is something that's really nice to see. And I think that it's easy to like spend all of the time on like the scripts, but I think making sure to leave room to have discussion is really important, because I think in some ways that can be one of the more important elements of the group in actuality. And I think the discussion last month was a great example of that.
Can I
Yeah,
just make a for as a second year returner, I feel like the first year, like, what is this? Blah, blah, blah. And like, you just have an experience. The amount of joy I felt when I saw who was coming back from year 1 to year 2 was like so immense. So I do think there's like a cumulative thing of just showing up month after month. And then at the end of a year, it's really special. So come back, come hang out next year.
Yeah, no, the way we run the group is we have one point in this year that people can choose to join or leave. And it is nice that we have a fair number of people who stay and also a fair number of people who join. But I also really love when people bring in the same play. You know, there's a fair amount of bringing in different plays, but to see a play come back and how much it's changed is also really wonderful. Yeah. So obviously feedback is one of the most practical parts of being in a writer's group. And we've commissioned an article that dives into all the details of giving feedback in a group setting. So it'll go really in depth there. But from your perspective, what kind of feedback do you like getting from a group? And what do you try to keep in mind in how you give feedback? What's helpful and what's not?
I can jump in. I came from originally the world of like stand-up, and so I really appreciate just any thoughts. I'm not like particularly I feel like I'm okay at like parsing out feedback from folks. But I will say something about this group that has made me like really want to grow in the way I give feedback is just there's such a dedication and thoughtfulness in everybody giving feedback in a way that's like, we are dedicated to your play growing. We want to see it thrive. And that's something I want too. And I just really am learning a lot about the ways that that other playwrights give notes and think about plays. And I think that's something that's always evolving and growing.
Yeah, just to jump on, Alyssa, I too have been like really floored by just the level of commitment where whenever people give feedback, I really feel like they put on the dramaturg hat of like, for the next X amount of time, I am a dramaturg for your play. And there's a real investment in how to really help the play level up or open up or kind of turn on itself in a way that the playwright is searching for. To be squish and share, it's always nice. I like that we lead with pops. Like, it's always nice to know the work is like good, has been received well for a moment. And I think that kind of helps soften. And then as people offer things that they found confusing or really make offerings to help the play improve, I do think it's easier to receive them. So some thoughts on feedback.
Yeah, one of the things that I really loved that I think this is language maybe Daria brought in, I'm not sure. The language of like, what do we hunger for from this script is like, I love that language in particular, and it's really helped me reframe the way I think about feedback, honestly, because it's like, what do we feel like this play is reaching towards, and what are some specific moments that we can help it get there? I love receiving that. I love giving that to other people. I think that's been one of the most helpful things, especially when I brought in a very early draft of a script, and getting to hear what people wanted from it was very helpful to figuring out how to shape the rest of the play, and what was sticking with folks was very helpful, especially in those early draft stages.
Yeah, I feel like the like initial just feeling towards something. I brought in something that I'm like, this is 10 pages of just blank thoughts. I don't even know what this is. And it was just people reacting in the moment of, no, this made me feel like this. And I'm like, I had no idea that was in there, but I do see where that comes in. And yeah, I feel like there's just a space of being able to feel free with doing that when you know that people are on your side.
Yeah, I would second that. I feel like one of the things that's working in this group this year that I'm happy about is that like I think there's a sense of like that everyone's excited about everyone else's work, and that it feels like a safe and warm environment. And so I feel like everything is received in a particular way because of that. And if a group feels too critical or competitive, then like everything takes on a certain tone. But when I feel like everyone is just genuinely so excited about each other and their work. And so I think that allows for just a lot of real exploration and discussion in sometimes intense ways. And I think a lot of people are just like, really like, yeah, tell me whatever, give me any feedback because of that level of trust. I think that's the baseline. Okay, so the heart of a group is what the playwrights offer each other, feedback, but also so much more. So thinking about people who've had the biggest effect on you in this or any group, what made their insights or help so valuable? And what advice would you offer someone wanting to be a good writers group member?
I think leaning into whatever, so I'm going to start with advice and then give an example. I think leaning into whatever style of dramaturgy, like whatever your dramaturg style is, sort of coming from there and offering that feedback sort of authentically from yourself is really, I think, is powerful. So I'll often like report to someone in our group like what I see in the play or and then if that's not right, they sort of know that I've gotten confused. And sort of in that vein, I think the feedback I've appreciated most is really coming from playwrights when I've read their work and I sort of understand their style and they bring a little bit of themselves to the offering or to the feedback. It's powerful to, I think, get a little injection of someone else engaging with your script.
I think advice that I would give to being a good writers group member is just genuinely trying your best to think about the world that somebody is creating and just try to build off of what they're bringing to you in a way that is like in a positive way. And I know that seems really easy, but it's not always. I think just really taking a moment to think about, like, I always especially love hearing from playwrights when they're receiving feedback on their work of like what they're looking for, because it helps frame what it is when something is in progress. And so just being someone's team member in a space like that, like you're not always going to get it right and you're not always going to say like the most genius thing that you could possibly say, but just we're in it together to build great theater. And I feel like anytime I'm in this space, that's how I feel. So that's an example.
Right.
Yeah. I think when I think about some of the best advice that I've received and some advice that I've gotten feedback that has been helpful, it's definitely finding new access points to the world that I've created. I actually got some advice the other day about the piece that I brought in where it was about teachers and only featured teachers on stage. And this wasn't actually in group, this was a friend of mine, but she was saying, well, what about the students? What if they were on stage? What if they were doubling with the teachers, which is a little prescriptive, but just giving this idea of another way into the world and another perspective that I hadn't considered in the world that I was creating was very impactful and very important for me and changed the way I looked at it. So I think the best advice that I can receive and hopefully give is something that just makes you think from a different angle, and kind of expand what is possible in your work.
Great. Another practical consideration is whether to do a group in person or virtually. And obviously this group is virtual. What are the pros and cons as you see them? Do you find both group forms equally useful, or do you have a preference for one of them?
Have any of you, I've only been in virtual spaces since the pandemic. Have you guys been in any real person writers groups?
I have, yeah. But I will say, and the Realm also does an in-person writers group. And because I'm based in New York, I was deciding between whether to do the in-person or do the virtual. And I'm a working gal, so virtual sort of took over. But also, I think there's so many pros and cons to both, but like as I mentioned, the big pro is like, I would never have had the opportunity really to spend time with Anamaria and Daria if we were, if I did the in-person group. And I'm sure there's very much pros to being a part of that group as well. I know several writers in that group. They're all wonderful people. But like, this is really an amazing opportunity to get to expand just sort of horizons. And I think too, if like just practical things of like travel, time frame, like, getting home at a reasonable hour, like sometimes those things are like only help your creativity when you can like make sure that you're not running around town, and just whatever fits into your schedule. So I think a virtual group definitely has its pros.
I will say there's like, and I'm sure you guys experience it too, like magic to being in person with people. So I'm a part of a group in LA and we're virtual, but sort of every like quarter we'll just grab drinks together and hang out, which is, I think, for me, like the fun of being in person. So I think there's also space for a little bit of both. But yeah, I don't mind the virtual groups. So
Yeah, I will definitely say that the virtual group is helpful for, like Daria was saying, folks like us who perhaps especially are not on the East Coast, and that's just, it's a different environment and a different scene over there. And so being able to feel connected with both is really, really nice. Like, I had never been to New York when I flew out last year. So being able to have a foot in that community feels important and impactful for me. I will also say that like it allows to navigate time differences a little more easily. So for instance, the group, everyone else meets at around 6. It's usually 3 for me. But because it's virtual, like we're able to kind of make that work in our schedules, I feel, as opposed to having that set time at 6 o'clock, which is when I'd usually be in rehearsal. So it's actually very helpful to have this virtual process, and it also feels, I don't know, a little low pressure. I think the socialization, it's a little harder sometimes socializing online, but I think as we've continued to have the same people show up month after month, we've started chatting more and just gotten more comfortable and trusted each other. So that's a pro and a con. It is harder to have those side conversations that build relationships. But as a pro, it's kind of always a group thing. Like there's always the same amount of buy-in from pretty much everyone in the group. And that's nice as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting to hear that the time difference, that it being 3 o'clock actually works better for you. And we have people even in Hawaii, like there's some big time differences, but people seem to make it work. And yeah, I agree, the socialization and like the finding ways to make that social time work, it does take a little bit more, but I think we make it work. And I certainly enjoy getting to see people who, before we had this group, it was much less frequently that I'd see people. So it's nice to be able to do that. Cool. Finally, coming back to community, the Realm Group starts the year by creating community agreements that cover many subjects, from default facilitation method to dealing with triggers to what to do if you miss a meeting. Is this process helpful in creating shared expectations, or holistically speaking, what makes a good citizen of a writers group?
I think it's super beneficial. I think it just sets the tone of what the expectations are, and it just gets everybody on the same page. Life happens. Will everybody stick to everything? Maybe not, but I think it just it lets everybody know early like what folks are looking for. And yeah, I personally appreciate it a lot. And I think there's little things within that too that like have made it more comfortable in ways. Like, for example, like going back to maybe a con of a virtual group, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And it's like, we had stated at the top, like, hey, if you're feeling burnt out from Zoom, you could turn your camera off. You take like 5 minutes if you need to. And I think just talking at the top of like ways that things can be work out better for everybody in terms of like everybody showing up with the same vigor. But also like ways to take care of yourself to make sure that you're able to do those things. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, I think setting expectations, I mean, just at the very least, if people send out work in advance, read and think about that work in advance. I think it really allows us to have the most productive time that we can and allows us to get into those more in-depth discussions quicker. I've definitely been a part of other groups where just sometimes people will show up not having read the material. So just sort of those baseline expectations and respect for the people that are putting time in to, look at your work are all very important. I agree about Zoom fatigue. And yeah, it's always important to highlight the triggering content in your material. I think we've done a good job of being able to just allow people to step out and into the space as they need to take care of themselves. And in doing that, we've created that trust, I think, has helped really solidify the trust that is important to kind of bind the group together and make it function.
Yeah, I agreed with everything you guys are saying. I also think I was thinking about how, well, sometimes like making community agreements or setting expectations can feel kind of like stiff or formal. I actually think it's let everyone really show up in a more human way where people can kind of share their access needs or share a little bit of like where this falls in their day or where it's falling in maybe a health journey or something like that. Without just sort of, create space for vulnerability and sharing without just it feeling apropos of nothing. It's been a really wonderful way for us to all kind of understand and ask of each other how to step up, how to show up, and just how to be in community with each other.
Yeah, I think often we start with the community agreements from previous years and it can feel like we're just going to use them. But even though usually the modifications are not huge, I think those modifications really bring the group together in discussion, and that discussion can really solidify like how the group wants to work together. And so I think it has proved to be worth doing, I think. Great. Well, lots of interesting discussion about the group and it's such a great group. Any final thoughts about what the group experience has been like or what you think people should think about as they're being part of other groups?
I just think like the more that we're talking about this, the best thing that you can do as a prospective person entering a writers group is just show up genuinely, show up respectfully, and I feel like it'll be good from there. Like just having other people's best interests in mind helps you put your own best interest forward and just be a human.
Yeah. I would say that especially in the first steps of writing a play, it can be pretty lonely. I know it's a lot of time spent on your own in your own head, and it's just been so enormously beneficial to be able to let people in. For me, it's a good practice to show people unfinished work and work in progress, which is sort of a muscle I'm building. And that has been enormously helpful just to let other people and yourself be inspired by the beginnings of an idea.
Ditto to what you're both saying. And I'd say really when joining a group, realize that you are part of what makes the group a group. And so you being there really matters, and the ethic and the essence with which you show up, really, it can change a room. So how can you make it the best group that you want? And how can you be of service to your fellow group mates? It makes for good fun.
Well, great advice to end on. Thank you all so much.